Welcome back to Collegiate Sports Connect. We're here in Nashville for the 2025 NCAA Convention. I'm excited to be sitting down today with Karen Peters, Deputy AD and SWA at Portland. Karen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So you are the chair of the nominating committee for the
Correct.
NCAA. And so for some of our audience, they may not know what that is. Can you break it down for us? What is the nominating committee? What is the main charge for it?
Sure. I love talking about the nominating committee because it sounds very strange, but it's a lot of fun. It's really great work. And it's essentially the committee that chooses people to be on other committees.
You guys are the gatekeepers.
And it's a wonderful way to be able to influence the sport operations and administrative operations and help people along in their career and have an impact. I mean, committee service, both at a conference level and the NCAA, is just such a rewarding experience. And so to be able to be a part of the nominating committee, this is my last year as chair, it's just been really fulfilling.
Tell me a little bit more about just how it works, the process of getting onto a committee. If I'm, an up-and-coming, maybe newly appointed senior administrator, how do I go about figuring out if there's a spot open, what those opportunities are?
Yeah, most of the committee opportunities go through conferences. So your conference will be the one who will tell you what openings are and what the process looks like to then be nominated by your conference up to the NCAA. And one of the challenges is that there's so many talented administrators in the NCAA and not enough committee spots for everybody that would like to serve. And so it's really challenging to get a spot. And it took me a long time to get my first committee assignment, and then a while to get my second too. And so what I tell people is that you just have to keep trying. Every time you see something you're interested in, put yourself forward. You just keep putting yourself forward. And at some point you're going to find the spot. It's going to be the right fit on your side and on the NCAA side, and then you're going to get in the door. One of the things I like about the nominating committee too is that we look at people's previous service, and the committees are really a mix of people who have been there before and know how things work, and people who are getting their first chance to serve on a committee, because it's part of the ethos of that committee service is getting new people in the room, getting those variety of perspectives. And so it can be hard when you keep putting yourself in and not getting it. And I tell people all the time, it's not personal.
Yep.
There's just a lot of good people out there. You just have to keep trying and you'll get your spot.
It's a little bit like matchmaking, it sounds like.
Yeah, a little bit, yes.
What advice do you have for those young administrators who obviously want to climb the ranks at their institution, become a senior leader? What can they be doing proactively in maybe those earlier stages?
Sure. There's committees all over the place. And so if you have an opportunity for service on your campus, take it. Tell your supervisor, tell your AD, your SWA that you're interested. If there's a committee that you can help with, that you'd like to do it. We've had people on our campus serve on committees related to Title IX and IT and hiring and budgets, and there's so many places where you can get your foot in the door. And then when you do that NCAA nomination form and it asks for previous committee service, yes, you can put your NCAA service, yes, you can put your conference service, but you can put your campus service. Put any time you've been on a committee, because every time you're on a committee, you're going to learn about group dynamics, you're going to learn about getting things done, you're going to learn about having those hard conversations and how you get to decisions. And so every time you have an opportunity to do that, you should take it. And that's true on campus, it's true at conferences as well. Conferences have committees and cabinets all over the place, and some of those are role specific. And if it's the game managers or the compliance administrators, that counts. It's committee service. Think about the group dynamics when you're in the room. If you have a chance to chair one of those groups, take it, and then be sure you list that, because those are the building blocks to then get on the bigger conference committees or those NCAA committees.
Are there any other challenges besides there's too many great administrators vying for a spot? Are there any other challenges to filling openings when they happen?
Really, I think the biggest challenge we face now is just volume, right? With conference changes and job changes, there's just a lot of change happening, and that flows down into committee service as well. And so I feel for people who are receive a committee assignment and then their school changes conferences and they have to give up that assignment. And so it's that kind of volume that leads to a lot of change. But it's also opportunity, right? Every time one of those happens, there's another chance for someone to serve.
There you go. Well, speaking of roles on campus, you are the SWA, and I'm always very fascinated with this role. I think some folks across the industry think it's a little antiquated. Do we need this? Sometimes you have an SWA and you have a female AD, and then other people think that it's still really vital to amplifying the voices of women in an athletic department. Talk to me about your perspective about this role.
Sure. I mean, I'm really grateful for the SWA role. It's given me the opportunity to be in the room when decisions are made, to have a voice in the room. Throughout my career, for me, it goes back to my very first experience in college athletics as a sophomore at New Mexico State University. I worked in the sports information office, and I saw the SWA at New Mexico State, who was Karen Fay, who was one of the original Title IX badass women who coached 3 sports and did everything. And so when I came along and saw her influence on the department and her impact on the students and the coaches, that was my original I want that job moment. And I was lucky to be in a place where she was incredibly supportive of me, along with the men who had worked in the sports information office. And so now it's still important. I mean, early on it was very much, I think, solo woman administrator, not senior woman administrator. And when you look around, convention here, and you see this explosion of women involved in intercollegiate athletics, and you look on campuses that have more than one woman, that's important. I mean, there's diversity in women's voices too, right? We can't represent all women being the only women in the room. And I look at our leadership team at Portland, and we have 7 people on our senior leadership team, and 4 of them are women. And all of them are enormously capable and could be an SWA today if they needed to be. And beyond that, we have other women in our department who can do it too. And that's, I think, the neat part about it is yes, there's some specific responsibilities and roles that could come with being an SWA, but now there's so many women in our business that I think it just, you're getting those voices earlier and earlier in the process. So it's not like you're going to a conference meeting and now I'm the SWA and I'm the only person speaking. The woman's viewpoint or related to gender or equity, that comes up in a variety of places.
Have you found, and maybe not specifically in your career, but maybe hearing from peers, that being in an SWA role does kind of pigeonhole you into being the one to talk about, diversity or Title IX, or are you finding that maybe nowadays that it is more, the love is shared and there are male voices talking about those issues?
Absolutely.
Too?
I think it's easier now, both because there's more women in the room and because I think there are so many men in this business who take gender equity seriously and have that perspective without a woman needing to remind them to have that perspective. And I think of the men I work with that I don't have to be the one to say, what about this, or are we thinking about equity? A lot of time that's just coming up organically as part of a decision, which is great progress.
Absolutely. Well, speaking about leadership roles, you had the opportunity at Portland to serve as the interim AD in 2012. Talk to me about that opportunity. Was there anything about that experience that surprised you about being in the big chair?
Yes, probably something every day that surprised me about it. It was an incredible professional experience for me. It was, I think, funny how you feel the weight of being in charge. Like it's a physical sensation of the responsibility that you have to your students and your coaches and your campus. But it was a really great opportunity. I think I had the chance to take on projects and be in rooms that otherwise I wouldn't have been. I worked with coaches. I worked on a construction project. And I helped recruit our new athletic director. I mean, that was a point where I was not in the mix. I chose not to be in the mix for that opening. And so what I really enjoyed about it was the opportunity to help us get from A to B, help us get from one really good leader to the next really good leader, and keep the department moving forward. And that was something we talked a lot about, is we're not here to tread water and just wait. Like we have to keep striving, we have to keep moving forward so that when our new person gets here, we can keep going. And I loved it.
How did you make that decision strategically to not go for the permanent role?
It was hard because I think particularly as a woman, when you have those opportunities, people expect you to step into them. And for me, it was the personal and professional sort of combination of factors. A lot of it was the thought that I really enjoyed my job. at UP. I'd been there at that point for 6 years, and I wasn't interested in leaving. And so what I didn't want to have happen is a new person to come in and see me as a rival or see me as a threat, and potentially then have me move on. I was interested in staying there and continuing my work. And so that was a big part of the conversation for me, is just if I want to stay here, how can I help us be successful? How can I help a new person be successful? And so for me, that wasn't being part of the search. I was very fortunate. Our president at the time, Father Bill Beauchamp, let me meet with candidates. So I got to see the search as it happened, and it was a really great exposure to how an AD search works.
Was there anything surprising about that process? There are so many administrators who have never been part of a search, either as a candidate or
yeah. Well, and I think that one was a little unusual, and granted now it's 12 years ago. And Father Bill was someone who'd had an enormous amount of experience in the NCAA, so he didn't hire a firm, he did it on his own, he knew a lot of people, and so it was run really internally. But I got to meet the candidates, I got to talk with them, and just, I think, get some exposure to what it looked like to come in and have a vision for a new place, and how you express that, how you learned about something new, how you approach that with coaches and staff. It was a really valuable experience.
That's fantastic. Well, you mentioned this recruiting the current AD. Talk to me about that relationship. You both were at Stanford together for a stint.
Yep.
Tell me how that working relationship has gone.
It's wonderful. I'm so lucky to work with someone that I like as a person and respect as a professional. And Scott and I started at Stanford together in the summer of '95. So we're literally going on 30 years of knowing each other. And he and a woman named Beth Good, who was a dear, dear friend, started as SID interns. And as someone who'd been in the SID world, I gravitated towards them to be friends. And we just, fell into a friendship together. And it's been wonderful to watch his career progression as well. We were together at Stanford. I was there for 10 years. And then when I came to UP, after that, he moved to the West Coast Conference, so we were colleagues that way. And then when the AD opening came, I knew his experience in fundraising, in external, with TVs and marketing and branding. And we needed that at UP to sort of keep moving forward. And so I encouraged him. I was like, I think this would be a great fit for you. I think you'd be really good here. And Father Bill thought so as well. And it's been really fun to work with him. I think we make a good team, and we trust each other because we've known each other for so long. And I think for me, one of the most interesting parts of it has been having a boss that's my age, essentially, where a lot of times when you think about athletic directors, you're thinking about sort of the veteran administrator who is imparting their wisdom to you. And so working with someone who's essentially my own age means that it's been interesting to learn from each other in that way, because I've learned a ton from him. I think he's learned from me. Some things we've learned together as we've gone through them. But it's just a really neat relationship. I'm really grateful for it. It's been really fun to work with someone that I know well and really just enjoy and like.
I want to shift gears and reflect a little bit on your career journey. You mentioned kind of starting in that SID world, and I think there is that perspective that if you get put in comms, you are not getting out of that lane, and there's not really a significant path to a senior leadership role, let alone an interim AD role. Talk to me about how you managed and navigated.
It's funny. Sometimes I'll joke with people that like I was in sports information and I got out, and I was in compliance and I got out. I think both of those happened early enough in my career where there's some movement. And some of it has to do with just the timing of the business, where departments were smaller then, and people were covering more things than now, where some roles can be really specialized. And so I think for folks early in their career, that's something to think about, is what role do you like? And early on, do you want to take a chance and try something else? And take the pieces that you've liked about working in comms or social media or compliance or recruiting and apply those to another piece of the department early on, just so you can test out some different things. for me, the move from sports information to something else came when I was in grad school at UMass and my internship with the Ivy League and Columbia, where that was in sort of the student affairs compliance piece, which led to my job at Stanford, which at the time was a brand new position in compliance and recruiting and admissions. And I was lucky enough to work with really great people there that sort of let me find my way into what that position was, and branch out and try different things. So I got to be a sport administrator at Stanford. I got to work on committees on that campus. And I was in a role that I think is a little unique because I worked with all 35 sports, all 35 head coaches, all the assistant coaches. It was, I mean, for me, it was like another master's degree in how to be a coach and how to manage a program, because I got to see not just volume of coaches, but like high quality, amazing people like Mark Marquis and Tara Vanderveer and Dick Gould and Mike Montgomery and I'm forgetting 100 of them who are just incredible coaches. And by being a part of the recruiting and admissions decisions and work, I got to really see, how do you manage a program? How do coaches approach their job? And I think that's really helped me as I've become a sport administrator and a senior administrator, is how it's definitely influenced how I work with coaches.
I do want to touch on that for a second, because in your role with Portland, you do oversee all the sport administrators. It feels like you could give a master class in being a sport admin, but what is kind of your top piece of advice for someone who's just getting into their first sport administration role and maybe they don't know the sport that well? Or
I mean, learn as much as you can, talk to the coach, ask them lots of questions. And I think the biggest thing is make sure they know you care about them, that them as a person and their program. And a big part of that is understanding it. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What are the ups and downs that come with seasons? Talk to them about recruiting and the challenges they're facing there. Talk to them about scheduling. Just learn as much as you can about your sport on your campus. Pay attention to the conference, pay attention to the national picture, so that when they come in and have a question or they're trying to solve a problem or they need you to advocate for them, then you know as much as you can to help them through that situation.
Going back to your career journey, you mentioned a lot of your stops, and they're all over the country. From the perspective of assessing opportunities, of course, it's important what the role is and how you fit that role. But how did you assess kind of the broader community or the state or the institutional profile for yourself? What was your process for doing that throughout your career?
Oh man, I think when I was young, I was looking for something that would help me grow and move forward. And especially when you're young, I tell people now, like, go have an adventure. Go try something. And so for me, that was moving from New Mexico State to UMass and going across the country to school there, and then living in New York City and working at Columbia, which going into it, I'm not sure growing up I ever saw myself living in New York. And I loved it, and I love it now. I consider it one of my hometowns. And to have the opportunity to be in New York was amazing. And then moving to Stanford, it was a lot about, it was the role. Also, to be very honest, it was the first and only full-time job offer I got coming out of my internship. I think like a lot of people, I was applying for all kinds of things. And at that point, I was open to, am I looking in marketing? Am I looking in business? Am I looking in administration? Am I looking in student support? And I mean, I was super lucky to get that opportunity, but and when it came, of course, it was Stanford, so I'm not going to wait for another job opportunity. I was yes, but it was also, I had been going through a job search of a couple of months and just hadn't had anything click yet. So, yep, that one did, and I took it and loved it. And then, spent 10 years there. And I think like a lot of people, it was my first job. I thought, well, I'll do this for 2 or 3 years and see what happens. And I stayed for 10 and a half. And then similarly at Portland, I liked Portland because it's similar to the Bay Area, right? It's got a great West Coast vibe. The school has a similar balance of academic and athletics. I really liked that part of it. I liked that they had successful teams. They were just coming off a women's soccer national championship in 2005. And so I felt those kind of similar pieces that I loved at Stanford were also in place at Portland. And so that made that move easy for me. And it's wild to think I've been there for 18 years. It honestly doesn't feel like that long, but it's just such a wonderful community. It's both in athletics and on our campus. I really love it there.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, it does.
Well, last question for you here. Obviously, we're at convention and there is so much going on. What's been top of mind for you and your committee peers?
Well, I think here this week, it's the same thing everybody else is trying to figure out, right? It's house, it's where are we going, and so it's going to sessions to see what we can learn. It's having a lot of conversations with people, and honestly, at this point, it's the acknowledgement that there's not a lot of answers out there, but we're asking the same questions that other people are asking, and so we're taking comfort in that. At least we're thinking about things the way that a lot of people are, and now we just have to figure out what our institutional approach is. I think it was in the Knight Foundation session yesterday, they talked about like contingency planning, and that's what we're doing, right? It's a lot of if then, and trying to be as best situated as we can so that when that information comes, we're able to absorb it and make some quick decisions.
Plan A, B, C, all the way through Z.
Yep, that's what we have.
That is what the industry is going through right now. Well, Karen Peters, Deputy AD and SWA at Portland and Chair of the Nominating Committee, thank you so much for joining us here at Convention and on Connect.
Oh, thank you. It was great to be here.